Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. The best example that I can give for the difference in how banking and access to banking services can make all of the difference for cannabis businesses is to make the comparison between Canada and Washington State. Washington State initially had a resident requirement for investors, so you had to be from the state, or a certain percentage had to be from the state. And so that affected a lot of out-of-state investors that weren't able to or didn't want to deal with a certain regulatory environment for investing in Washington cannabis. So what we saw in Washington with the restricted investment capital was that businesses weren't able to expand, they weren't able to grow as much. Whereas you look at Canada and you see a lot of companies going to Canada to access the public marketplace, to become publicly traded, to get more capital, have then come back to the US and been able to pay out 800, 900 million for hemp activities. Whether it's a farm or producer processor in New York or what have you, there's a lot of capital coming back. And that's simply just having the access to it. Whereas people in Washington State are struggling just to expand to another area like California. These companies in Canada have been able to access banking, access capital, go nationwide, and then go interstate, international, to US, to Colombia, to Spain, and beyond. Ultimately, access to capital is huge. It'll be the biggest game changer that this industry has seen since legalization. And that's not saying much. It's only been a couple of years. But there will be a lot of opportunities. For example, machinery. There's been innovation, but without access to that capital for leasing or loans, then you can't automate. You can't innovate with automation. You can't have automation without capital. It all goes hand in hand once everyone is able to scale up. Once you can capitalize to scale, you'll be able to do a lot more. So check out the link in the show notes for my recent podcast on automation, Capitalize to Scale, that we had hosted at the World Trade Center. It's a good one. In my opinion, one of the largest influencers for the cannabis and hemp industry is access to banking. With banking, you have convenience of transactions and payments, compliance, as well as lending options. And so there's been a lot of push towards regulation and approval for cannabis businesses to be able to bank legally within that framework. And so there's been a massive request to Congress to kind of push and implement for a Safe Banking Act. The Division of Financial Institutions, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, along with the coalition of financial regulators from more than 20 states, is asking congressional leaders to consider legislation that creates a safe harbor for financial institutions to serve businesses operating legally under state law or in trusted states with the full oversight and jurisdiction of cannabis-related activity. They want to establish a safe harbor for banks to serve entities in an effort to reduce the risk of large cash-intensive operations and bring the safeguards, activities, and standards into the regulatory reporting compliance framework. The commissioner and regulators from 24 other states and territories sent a letter to Congress describing the well-documented conflict between federal and state laws, which has created barriers for financial institutions desiring to serve businesses involved in state-licensed cannabis activities. The regulators shared the concerns with respect to public safety, increased difficulty of tracking the flow of funds, contributions to a loss of economic activity, workforce development, and community development opportunities. And with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.